After the wide-open straights of Road America, things are going to get a bit cramped. Zandvoort packs a lot into its small footprint on the sandy coast. Will drivers respect each other's space? Will the pushing and shoving begin? We'll find out soon as we get ready to watch the PCA Sim Racing Series 11 Sport Class, and you'll see it all live here on RaceSpotTV. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth tonight is Joey Tebbin. And behind the scenes is our director, Ramiro Cisneros. Well, Joey, this is a track that is definitely proved that you need good track position out there to be competitive, and we saw that last night as well.
It is very difficult to pass here. It's tight quarters, slightly less tight quarters than it once was. A new development when Formula One started coming here a few years ago means there's a little bit more banking in places. It's a little bit wider and safer in places, but it is still exceptionally tight and exceptionally difficult to pass. And I know a lot of people have been talking about Dune the past couple of weeks. You know, Timothée Chalamet, the Sandworms. We got plenty of dunes here as well, and I'm looking forward to these.
Yes, it'll be a little bit sandy if the wind blows across the track, that is for sure. But let's take also a look at the championship as well and how that is shaping up for this series. Dirksen, with 3 wins out of 4, practically has a perfect score right now since he has his 1 drop week counted up. So 75 out of 75 possible. Jokel is going to have to try and catch up as best he can. But he has been kind of hounding him. He's been getting plenty of second places throughout. And let's not forget about Martin, who's still kind of hovering in the background, but he'll need some good results from here to really try and do anything before the end of the season. There on down, it gets very tight. Gibson, Komatz, both within 7 points of Martin. And then it's only about 5 more points back from Komatz to Kenneth Eskridge there in 6th. From there on down, it's 1 point and 1 point. 2 points between Jarawala and Abu Haka. So you can see the drivers could easily swap around here late in the season in the bottom of the top 10 as we take a look now at the warm-up session. Qualifying going to be taking place in just a couple minutes here, and they'll get 3 laps, Joey, to try and set their best time.
And you're going to use these last couple of moments of practice to really set yourself up for that. There's not much in terms of practice time in this session. You've got to do most of your practice on your own, in your own time. But it always helps to get every last little lap you can. This is a track that is very, very difficult. It rewards rhythm, it rewards preciseness, and you're only going to get that with a couple of extra laps. So no surprise to see basically the entire field out to take advantage of every single second of this practice session and at least get a little bit more comfortable before they've got to go 100% and get the best lap time possible in qualifying.
And as we saw last night, it's going to be a very cool track as well. As you can see, it is just before 7 a.m. virtual standard time here, which means it's quite cool on the track without the sun beating down on it, and 65 Fahrenheit right now, 18 Celsius on the track surface on top of things if you're over on the metric side. So we could see them maybe take a lap or two to really get the tires up to temperature in this qualifying session. We'll see who is able to put down a good one. The big thing is that last night we had, I believe it was 18 drivers sign up in the end and race, Joey. Here it is much bigger than that. If they wind up hitting traffic, oh boy, it's going to be tight.
Yeah, lap traffic around here. I mean, you're seeing it right here with John Gibson trying to get by the number 556 of Greg Bluen. It's not lap traffic in practice. They're both racing for the same piece of track, but imagine seeing this once race time comes around. If you are the leader catching the back of the field, it's going to be almost impossible to get by if you're in the middle sector. You're going to have to wait until the front straight here where you've got a very, very wide berth to potentially look to the inside and hope that a lap car gives you some service, and that didn't happen there. Bluen's going to fight for position there, and maybe we'll see some of that from some lap cars today as well.
Yurt's out currently with the 6th fastest lap in warm-up. Can he back that up once we get out to the qualifying itself in the next few seconds? Looks like that clock is getting pretty close. Race control going to get on the radio now and just have a little chat with the drivers before they switch over to that. Let them know what expectations are. And boy, do they need it, because they have seen a lot of cautions so far at the start of the races in this class. So let's cross our fingers that we stay green all 40 minutes.
Yeah, good lap there from Mark Foley to put a P1 in practice, by the way, but full course yellows are enabled in this series. They're activated by race control. If there is a full track blockage or if there's 4 or more cars involved in an incident, a full course yellow will be thrown. And that's something different from most road racing leagues on iRacing. There are actually full course yellows that can bunch the field back up, get everybody back together, maybe even give some of those drivers who crashed the chance to get repaired. It's a whole nother dynamic that makes this PCA Sim Racing series a little bit more realistic than some other leagues that are doing exactly the same thing, just without those yellows.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point about using that free repair. They do have one available to them if they get damaged. We saw a few use them last night in the challenge class. Also, a few notes on that. It's fixed setup, so drivers don't have to worry about tweaking them in all of this. We will have a scheduled pit stop with the drivers being able to do about 30 minutes on a single tank of fuel. So anywhere between about 30 minutes to go to 10 minutes to go, you could see them pit in, although we expect most of them to be later on. And they do have some incident limits if they abuse the track limits here. So at 17, they're going to get a drive-through. Then every 5, there'll be another drive-through. And then if they hit 25, they'll actually be disqualified. So you have to keep it between the white lines and make sure that you don't hit too many people or other things, or else you're going to be in trouble quite quickly. Drivers are now getting out on track to start their warm-up lap, and they'll hopefully start to see some times on the board here shortly.
Yeah, they're coming. I'm not even on track, Joe, and I think I've already hit 25 incident points. I've already been disqualified.
Like you. Yeah,
it does. Also, what did you say 18 Celsius was in Fahrenheit? I flunked out of college chemistry.
Actually, I have to pull mine back up once again. That is 65 Fahrenheit.
Okay, there we go.
Yes.
There's got to be some formula that I could remember, but my capacity for math has run out very quickly.
If I'm not in front of the sim, I use Google. So, yeah.
I can count to 9. Anything higher than that, it's too tough.
Is that because that's how many fingers you have left?
Exactly.
Mark Frost, meanwhile, coming around to complete a lap. I think this is his warm-up lap. Yeah, it looks like he's starting on a flyer now. It's
the warm-up lap for Frost.
Cute. Yes, it is indeed the warm-up lap. I didn't actually mean to do that one, but Frost.
I know you missed me, Joe. I know you missed me.
Oh, ever so much. I need to get you on my real-world broadcast too. But Mark Lacombe now comes around in through Gerlach, and now the newish lead banked Hugenholtz corner. You can see he's going to ride around the outside with the progressive banking, and then head on up through Slotemacher.
We got a little bit of Rexy action here with Nathan Abuhalka. Definitely going to be aggressive, going to be fearsome if you see that in your rearview mirror. And this is a very fearsome sector of the track for that matter. Very high-speed corner there through turn 8 and then into turn 9. It's called Bocht 9. That just means turn 9 in Dutch. Don't really need to translate that. But that is a deceptively long corner. And then speaking of deceptively long corners, coming up right after that turn 10, it's actually a full 180-degree corner, but you enter it thinking it's a 90-degree corner. And suddenly you're still turning, and you're still turning, and you're still turning. You're wondering where the apex is, and eventually you've just got to deal with the exit you've got on that short little straight into turn 11.
Yeah, I have to confess, I've never been a fan of that back-to-back hairpin there. It just always feels frustrating, doesn't feel that fun to me. There's definitely some other corners that are quite a bit of fun around here. Patrick Gill going to show one of them off. Coming through Lyondike, also updated now with lots of banking, giving them chances to pass down into Tarzan by sort of negating some of the aero wash coming through that fast right-hander. Albuhaka, the first one to set a time, sets the marker at 35.3. He is immediately dropped by multiple drivers. Jokel goes quickest at a 34 flat.
Well done there to Kevin, but you can see those margins very, very, very small. Even going back to P10, it's only just over a second, and every time starting to flow in now. It's been about 3 minutes now. Everybody came out of the pits instantly to get those laps going, and you better be quick, because with only 10 minutes and a 90-second lap, if you make one mistake, if you miss out on the chance to get one lap, you're not going to get every lap in qualifying. You're not going to get every chance you need. So seeing everybody out on track right now. Mike Sackstein hasn't got a lap in just yet. He'll be looking for his first. Scott Nell, he's been on the back foot on his first lap as well. This will be his first timed lap in about a minute and 10 seconds.
Yeah, they have given up at least one of them with an off tracks or something somewhere. So they'll have to try and hope this one stays a little bit cleaner. Nell coming up into Sheavelock. This is how a lot of this track used to look, those fast sweepers just all around it. before it was truncated down to its shorter version, and more technical version that they have today. Foley still lacking a lap out there. I'm not sure if, oh wait, no, it looks like one just finally got put on the board, so that did count. Apologies. And that jumped him up to 4, so it's a good thing that one counted.
And I think we're going to see him jump up even higher. Remember, his last lap in practice put him up to P1, so there's definitely speed left in that Mark Foley mobile. Only the second round he's done this season, so he's probably not going to be fighting for the championship because he missed the first 3 rounds, but that gives you maybe a little bit of freedom. Just focus race by race, focus on winning instead of fighting for the championship. We'll see what he can do. Peter Yerkes going to cross the line here, 1:35.6. A little bit slower than he would have liked. He's going to try and pick up some more time here. Should have 2 more laps before the session runs out of time.
Joko, by the way, has it now down to a 33.8, so he's a quarter of a second ahead of Gibson, who didn't count his second lap. I think I saw him intentionally slowing that one to cool the tires maybe and see if he can get another flyer in. Komat's also put himself up onto the second row, so nice job by him. As we watch Jim Walsh now, one of those that still does indeed need a lap. In fact, he must be on his first flyer right now because I don't see anything, any even failed attempts on his timing sheet.
Yeah, we'll have to wish Jim good luck that this is the lap that actually counts. Also, one name you'll see on the side of your screen, or rather one name you won't see on the side of your screen, Derek Dirksen is not in this session today. Championship leader may be missing out in this round, and that could blow the championship wide open. That gives Jokel a big chance.
I actually see him out there right now, it looks like.
He's made it? He's made it at the last minute.
Yeah, but his first 2 laps got deleted.
Ooh.
He is under the gun. The 505 car really needs to set a clean one as Jim Walsh comes across the line in the 269. And did that one count? I'm not seeing a time flick up for him. So no, he's going to have to continue on and hope that he can at least get a clean one in the last 3 minutes. Thankfully, the laps aren't terribly long around here as Krutzler comes to the line. I can also tell you that Dirksen's just coming across now. Let's see if his last lap actually counts. 34.7. That's a good one, but he's starting from 10th. He is going to have a hell of a time.
He's gonna have to do some overtakes for almost the first time this season. He did have one bad race at the Red Bull Ring, ended up using that as his drop week in the first 3 rounds of the season, but that'll be exciting. Championship leader, potentially fastest driver in 3 of the first 4 rounds. Coming from the back, I think he's going to really test the notion that Zandvoort is a place where it's hard to pass. If you're aggressive enough, Derek Dirksen might just be able to find some places to pass.
This is Andrew Elsom here in the number 6 machine coming down through Masters. He's already taken his 3 laps, so he's just getting some extra practice in from here. 34.924, good enough to get him well up the order. You talked about how tight it was. There are not many cars that are more than a tenth of a second apart from each other, especially in the mid-pack, which is really a testament to how well they have sorted all these drivers into their classes.
Yeah, that's another unique thing about this series. There are 4 different classes: Challenge, Sport, Club, and Pro, separated by skill level, experience level, whatever you want to call it. But it does mean the competition is incredibly close in all 4 of those categories. And there's a lot of Porsche owners, so there's a lot of demand for this league. That's why they have to split it up, and it's great to see. Lots of people, lots of racers, and lots of very, very fast racers. Lots of very fast Porsche owners at that.
Peter Yurtz, looks like he's going to abandon his final lap. I was going to say he had 1 more lap to go here, and I'm trying to see if anybody else has a lap they can set. Looks like Jim Walsh, I think, might be able to get around. Yes, he will be able to get around in time. He's just going through Shevelock. That's the 269 car out there that should have enough to try and get 1 more down. He sits in 16th right now, so I'm keeping an eye on him to see if he can manage to improve.
Yeah, I mean, he only needs, if you look at the top 16, if Jim improves by only 0.2, he's going to improve about 5 spots or so, up to P13 or P12. So it's not much, and that's why I mentioned you need every lap you can get in practice. Every little bit you can be more on the rhythm and more smooth through that twisty middle sector of this track. That means maybe 5 to 10 qualifying positions when it comes down to it in qualifying. Every lap of practice matters here.
So Walsh is he's currently at the final corner through Lyondike. There he is now on your screens and comes to the timing line. Let's see if this is quicker than the 34.9. No, does not improve. He only needed 7 thousandths of a second as well. So a bit of a shame. He is the last driver able to set a time. That is everybody. And it looks like the grid is now set for this one. So great stuff from the field. Only Chris Costas, I saw, failed to set a time, but I think he's not in the session currently. Let's go through your starting order with Kevin Jokel putting himself onto the pole today. John Gibson will be starting in P2. Rex Jariwala will start from third as Steve Komatz will flank the outside of that second row. Mark Lacombe starts fifth with Mark Foley next to him, P6. And then you've got Jeremy Hall on the next slide in seventh as David Krutzler starts eighth. Mike Sachs will be ninth today, Derek Dirksen in 10th. And then starting inside of row 6, it's Ken Eskridge flanked by Charlie Ferrer.
Unlucky 13th, always a tough place to start, but Nathan Abuhalka is going to be looking forward from there alongside Andrew Elsom. Mark Frost, he's going to be hoping to warm up over the opening laps. He'll start alongside Jim Walsh, who got some good TV time at the end of the qualifying session. Randy Lervold and Gil Estupinan round out the top 18, but the hits keep on coming because it is a massive field, dare I say even a long field today, as Andrew Long starts P19 alongside Carl Bacheri, Patrick Gill and Peter Yerksa down to row number 11, and Jeff Williams and Robert Neville. We're still not done though, Joe. There's still 10 more cars.
Yeah, Joseph Evers starts 25th, Gregory Gorel in P26. Then it's Jeffrey Gardner 27th, Antonio De Silva in 28th, and David Kaufman 29th. Ankerberg Zona will round out your top 30. Kevin Hammond starts 31st, James Legault 32nd, and Greg Bluen 33rd, with Scott Nell 34th and last on the field of drivers. And those drivers are now heading out of Kumho and into Lyondike as the pace car will lead them into the sport class race. Will we see a clean start down into Tarzan, since it can so often wind up in tears? Honestly, the whole first half of this lap could easily see drivers get tangled with one another and cause a big wreck. So cross your fingers, cross your eyes and toes, and hope that we stay clean. The drivers have been given lots of advice on how to do so. Have they heeded it? Waiting for the call. There it is. Green flag is out for Kevin Jokel, who accelerates away. Decent start, but Gibson going to try and come up around the outside. Can he outbreak him? 3 wide into there as Jarawala takes a bit of a peek, but he backs out of it by the time they get to the first apex. They come through that opening hairpin with what looks like a clean start.
But this is where it can get very, very tight. Coming out of turn 2 into turn 3, heavily banked, heavy braking zone on lap 1. Many, many lines on offer. It's almost like an oval. There's going to be beating and bang. Doors coming together for Komatz and Lacombe there. But other than that, that was a remarkably clean run through turns 2 and 3. And I see all 34 cars still pointed in a straight line.
Looks like Bergzona did get tipped around. I think that was a contact with Kaufman in the 808 car. We'll see if they'll take a look at that in race control, since they do give out live penalties in this series.
That's the benefit of having live race control. You can see those incidents as they happen. You don't just have to let the drivers be drivers and regulate things on track. But up here in the top 16, you've got to relegate your things yourself. And Jim Walsh, he's up 3 spots already. He was ready to pounce. He made some aggressive moves. And that's exactly what you have to do. It's so tough to pass at Zandvoort that when you get those opportunities on lap 1, you've got to take them. And you can see Dirksen and Walsh, biggest movers, up 3 spots.
Yeah, Dirksen certainly doing what he needs to do to try to take another win. He's not going to rest on his laurels and try to make sure that this is a difficult fight for anybody involved. Here is David Krutzler, who currently has Dirksen behind him. They're going to come out of Lyondike. Let's see what kind of run the 505 has.
David v. Derek, the battle of the D names. I don't think this straight is going to be long enough, and with draft so diminished in these GT3 style race cars, on such a short straight like that, you're not really going to be able to take full advantage of the draft. Derek Dirksen is going to have to take advantage of being faster in the corners, and that's going to be exceptionally difficult. He qualified behind David Krutzler. His speed has not been greater so far tonight. But he's going to be learning with every lap and hoping that as he gets a little bit more comfortable after a late practice start, he might be able to start moving forward.
Working their way through Schlotemacher, now up the hill. It's a blind crest on the way over into Shevlock here, and quite a train of cars starting to form. Komatz up at the front of them in 5th place, and from there on down, you really don't have a break all the way, my goodness, I'd say maybe until about Patrick Gill in 22nd.
Riding on board with Kenneth Eskridge here. You can see right here at turn 10 how long and agonizing this corner is. You see 3 different lines being used there, and you see one car off in the gravel. I think that's Rex Jarawala, and he's got the 19 joining him.
Yeah, Mark Lacombe is the other one in that number 19. They're going to try and get it turned around, but with it being so close to the beginning of the race, there is no break to try and enter the field. Let's see if we can figure out what happened. This is Eskridge. And it looks like it happened in front of them. So the 19 and Jarawala, trying to remember his number here. That would be...
Number 7, I believe?
7, yeah. Thank you. Number 7. We'll check in on that in a bit. Kevin Jokel, in the meantime, really making hay while the sun, doesn't quite shine out here yet. He's got about 2 seconds over the next nearest car, setting now the fastest lap of the race at a 33.7. Does seem like having that clear air is very important at this track.
It is very important, and having the consistency of Kevin Jokel has been very important, and holding the lead on lap 1 was especially important. He didn't get the biggest jump in the world. He was actually side by side with Gibson into turn 1, but he kept the inside, kept everything pointed straight, made sure the tires heated up underneath him, and didn't make any mistakes on lap 1. And he's been rewarded with clean air in front of him and quite a gap behind him now to Gibson. He was about 0.3 faster than him in qualifying, and if he can just continue this pace, make sure there's no mistakes, the next 35 minutes might just be a breeze for him as long as there's no lap traffic.
Now, but we're checking in on David Krutzler once again, because he's now got a shot at the podium with Komatz getting promoted into that 3rd spot by the wreck that we saw a little bit earlier. He's got even more pressure because these are going to be hungry drivers that'll want to spray the champagne and add to that stat on their history here in the PCA. So, man, look at just how many cars are lined up behind him. We mentioned Krutzler. That's Dirksen in there as well. Mark Foley in the next one back, and then Mike Sachs.
Those last 2 shots were what I see when I hide outside of Zandvoort with my spy cameras, by the way. But Derek Dirksen has had a phenomenal start, partly of his own doing. He did make up 3 spots on lap 1, but he stayed out of that incident with Jarawala in the 19 as well, and now he's only 4 spots behind Jokel. This means that a day that looked fairly bad coming into this for Dirksen may not actually be that bad in this championship. If it ends as it is right now, with Jokel winning the race and Dirksen in 5th, Dirksen would still lead the championship, and that is a pretty remarkable recovery for a day that looked 5 minutes ago like it might not be so great.
You know, you bring questions about when you say that you've got your spy glasses. You do realize there is a clothing optional beach nearby.
Oh boy. Do I know that? I do, of course.
As we continue to follow Komatz here, dealing with all kinds of drivers breathing down his neck, we hop on board with Dirksen, our points leader. He's going to take a look down to the inside of Krutzler. Krutzler gives him the space at the apex, but he will fend him off successfully.
That is definitely a place you can go for moves. Turn 10, a little bit more dicey because, as I mentioned earlier, it is kind of a tricky corner. It's not as tight as you think. It's not as heavy of a braking zone as you think. And Dirksen looked to the inside, couldn't quite make it happen, though. The braking zone here into turn 11, that can be a passing zone. Dirksen was a little bit too far back to make that legitimately, though. He's going to slot back in line. That has been 2 attempts, though. 3 attempts in 3 quarters, Joe. The second Derek gets back on the inside of Krutzler, he's going to be going for the move. That is going to be very fearsome for the driver in 4th place.
Interesting to see how aggressive he's being right at the start of this race. He's got plenty of time. If he feels like he's got the speed, I don't know that I would be taking these sorts of risks, but little weaving back and forth from all 3 of these drivers, some trying to break the slipstream, others trying to see if they can position themselves to attack, but no change between any of them. It's still Komatz 3rd, Krutzler 4th, Dirksen 5th.
This is when it's good to be the championship leader as well, because you've a dive to the inside for Krutzler, rather, but down on the bottom of the banking. It is differently banked down there, and that loops around the rear end of the Porsche.
David going to have to back it up and get it moving through the grass. He'll get going here, but boy, that was a costly attempt for him. Dirksen gets at least one of them done. Now he's got to focus on Komatz instead, and he's wasted no time. He's already on the rear bumper of the 210.
And that was exactly what I was getting at. The championship leader, Derek Dirksen, has a target on his back, but he also has a name that everybody recognizes as the championship leader. And when you're trying to defend against him, that's going to be a little bit more pressure on you. It's going to make you a little bit more nervous. And in the case of David Krutzler, it makes you a little bit more vulnerable to those slightly silly mistakes where you crack under the pressure of a guy who you know is going to try and pass you.
Just an update, Jarawala was given a black flag for that incident that we saw just briefly earlier on. Unfortunately, going to have to come in and serve that drive-through. Way off, almost to the dirt there for Komats coming out of the Hans Ernst chicane. Thankfully, he does not spin the car. He's got to be careful. There's certainly some spots where that will spit you right into the Armco.
It does get a little bit easier out of the final corner, though, with the updates from a couple years ago. No longer a place where you have to lift. Heavy banking, full throttle. That does make for slightly better racing, makes for the drafting a little bit easier into turn one. Dirksen not close enough to do anything with it, though. Just a couple car lengths too far back to go for a move that time, but he's going to be putting the pressure on. Let's see if Komats learns from Dirksen on the last lap. He does. He goes for the high line, takes it from Dirksen.
I'm sure it is so tempting to think, surely that's shorter down there. It's got to be quicker, but nope. It is just too highly banked around the outside to try and make a pass. We saw that last night as well, as drivers were getting a bit desperate. I think this is, Jeremy Hall here in a very fierce fight with Ken Eskridge. This is for 7th position as they swing out of Sheave down in a Masters.
Immensely confusing, though, because Jeremy Hall drives the number 28, but what's the number on the side of his car? Is it the 6028? Is it the 2860? Is it the 28? Is it the 60? I don't know.
Yeah, someone needs to let him know he needs to update that paint a little bit, but coming out of turn 10 now, not as good through that section, or was Ken Eskridge, I should say, compared to Jeremy Hall. He dropped back significantly, so he's not going to be able to attack at least this time through. Much safer than he was at the start of the lap.
This is the separation we kind of expected. We were spoiled with about 10 minutes of incredible racing on lap 1, but things do tend to get stratified out at Zandvoort, and they definitely have in the top 9, but back here, last spot in the top 10, this is getting very, very close. Nathan Abuhalka up a couple of spots from where he started. He's got some very fast drivers behind him, though. Andrew Elsom only about 3/10 back. Charlie Ferrer trying to break the train as well. It is going to be very, very tight here for this last spot in the top 10 and for P9 as well. Even though it may have been separated a little bit up front, these guys are going at it.
They work towards Gerlach. This is such a tricky entry into turn 3 into Hugenholtz, and we've seen this move a few times out of Albuhaka, trying to go low down through that banked left-hander. Hasn't quite worked yet. I think he's got to be careful, because if Elsom gets any closer, he could try to pick his pocket when Nathan goes low like that.
That would definitely be a way to do it. This corner, again, so difficult. Turn 8 at Masters. It's high speed. It's not flat out, but you do have to hit that rhythm. You have to hit the line perfectly, because if you're not on the apex, if you're not in the one single groove through there, you are in the grass or the gravel, and you're opening the door for a move behind you. So all three of these guys, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, did a fantastic job of making it through there, not losing any time whatsoever. And then you do get to rest for just a moment. And this short straight between turn 10 and turn 11, a little bit more dicey through turns 11 and 12, a little bit of banking to help you out on exit there. Breathe for just a second, breathe for a little bit more on the front straight, and then the rest of the lap, there is no time for taking a breath. It is all high commitment.
Interesting that Dirksen set a personal best there through Sector 1 as well. So he's looking like he's quick when he wants to be, just can't seem to hold it together. In the background, there's a fight, though. Look at this. This is for 7th between Hall and Eskridge. In fact, they're almost banging doors coming down into the first corner. If we could turn the cameras over to them. There they are, around the outside. Eskridge is going to deny him and take 7th away from the 28 car.
It was good stuff. Turn 1 not as banked as the corner that's coming up here in turn 3, but there is still a little bit of banking on the outside. You can make an outside run work, and Ken Eskridge doing a fantastic job of using that. His name sounds a little bit like Kevin Estra, so maybe a little bit of Porsche juju coming between those two guys, something like that.
I'm sure he would love to have the skill, but Ken Eskridge, in the meantime, will swing it once again through Sheavlock, still out of reach of Jeremy Hall. Now they've been joined by Charlie Ferrer, so it's become a bit of a 3-car fight. In fact, Charlie very strong through Masters as they cut back. down to the apex of 9. Nothing doing at this stage. He'll try and once again swing underneath. Just the back and forth of this track offers tempting opportunities, but it is so tough to pass.
It's a little bit like a siren of Greek mythology. All of these opportunities are so tempting, but the second you try and go for them, the doors close very, very quickly, and you realize why it is actually so tough to pass in Zandvoort, even though it is sometimes opportune, and then sometimes it looks like a door might be open. In turn 10, in turn 11, those doors close very, very quickly, and you do have to be a little bit more cautious, though. It's always a good time to make a move into turn 1, though. If you can be side by side, that's the best place to do it, and we might just see it here from Charlie Farrer if he can get that little bit closer and get a nose to the inside.
Farrer might be tied to the mast for now because he's not close enough to try and make that pass, unfortunately. So the siren call will continue to tempt him. We'll see if he can actually successfully get through without wrecking the car, as a couple drivers have definitely come into contact already. Thankfully, relatively clean, and still the two black flags. We didn't mention David Kaufman also was given one for his contact a little bit earlier on. Still dangerously close to Jeremy Hall. Looks like the orange and blue number 11 gonna continue to keep him honest. What is this, though? Holy cow. Got a nice little battle brewing. This looks to be between 20th, 21st, 22nd, and 24th.
We were talking earlier about how the skill level in this series is so evenly matched. That means that even if you're fighting for P20, you're still going to find some guys to race with who are of similar speed and are just as aggressive. And also, all of these championship positions matter for the season-long championship. There's 7 rounds. Your best 6 of those 7 count for points. So even if you're fighting for 20th and 21st, the difference between that is a point, and if the championship comes down to 1 point at the end of it, you're going to be potentially regretting not fighting for 20th, even though it might not have seemed important. It might be important at the end of the season.
Exactly. As Komats continues to lead that group up at the front, we'll go back to that battle in the back if it starts to erupt, but it does look like it is separated. This has unfortunately not gotten all that much closer at the very, very front, but Dirksen makes sure to keep Komats on his toes. Mark Foley is also back there now. I don't think he was quite this close before in that 23, but he's made up the ground. Unfortunately, he's found the same problem that Derek has. They've hit a wall.
Oh, but early pit stops here. I was just going to bring this up. We're past 15 minutes in this race, and the pit window is definitely open if you want to go for an alternate strategy. And David Krutzler, he spun early on, fell to the back of the field, was mired in traffic behind drivers who he was actually faster than, and he's going to go for an undercut of sorts by coming out into clean air, driving on track with nobody around him, and seeing if he can pull off the undercut that way, because there's no tire changes in this series. The races simply aren't long enough for tire changes to really matter, so the only way you can pull an undercut is if you end up in clean air.
Bad news. I wondered if he went a little bit wide. Krutzler, I think, went over the white line on pit exit. He's got a black flag. He's going to come in and serve that. I was going to agree with you that, you usually don't see the undercut be as good in sports cars here in iRacing, but it was used to great effect last night by Karachai. Just unfortunately for Krutzler, that one little slip will deny him the chance to show us if he could use it.
But I do wonder, maybe Mark Foley riding in third here. He looks pretty quick, might be getting held up a little bit by Komats and Dirksen. Does anybody here decide to come down pit lane early? Looks like the answer is no. And it is a little bit more risky up here because with the pit lane delta as short as it is at Zandvoort, if you pit from a battle up front, you do actually play the risk of falling back about 30 seconds or so and ending in that 23rd, 24th, 25th range where you would actually be racing with people. So that strategy of coming in early does definitely work. You do just have to watch your relative and watch the track and make sure there's actually a pocket of clean air that you'll end up in and not deep traffic.
Yeah, and you're right. I think there's just too many cars here for them to try and undercut somebody sneakily like that. So Foley will have to stay patient, maybe until closer to the end, and pull something off as, he's brave on the brakes in the sheave lock, maybe too brave, as I think he overshot the entry to the corner, and Dirksen pulls back away once again. The battle for third just unending since Komats inherited that position. Credit to that 210 car. I don't think we've seen him flinch this entire time, despite multiple drivers filling up his mirrors.
He's done a fantastic job. Hasn't even been looking in his mirrors, I have to imagine. I think he's been confident in his pace and the fact that Dirksen's been about 5 car lengths back in every real opportunity to go for an overtake. So he's been able to look forward and just drive his own race and not get worried about the championship leader in his rearview mirrors. That's exactly what you need to do. If you don't want to get tricked by the pressure, if you don't want to be forced into errors, just don't look at the guy behind you. If he gets a little bit closer, you might have to, but right now, you're all good.
Rip the mirror off and don't look back.
Exactly.
But Komats has been just managing it, and he's definitely got a great drive. As that was Foley in the background, so he was listening to you there, it seems, as he is going to take a stop. Oh, but he slowed way down coming into pit lane. Not sure what that was about. And for some reason, I see Ankerberg Zona also with a black flag, and I don't think that was from the stewards themselves. That must have been an iRacing black flag.
Yeah, I think Foley was very fast on pit entry, slammed on the brakes to get himself slowed down, and maybe overcommitted a little bit, but you know, he was really quick on pit entry. He was fully committed.
All right, so as drivers start to affect their strategy here at the halfway point in this race, we're going to check back in with a battle that was certainly fun before. Jeremy Hall versus, well, Charlie Ferrer. I guess this time it was Ken Eskridge before, but Ken has disappeared up the road. He is nowhere to be seen. There he is as he flashes by.
Good to see him there. And by the way, all jokes aside on Mark Foley, he did actually have a very long pit stop there, so I think he may have actually gotten a speeding penalty, and that is so unfortunate. 2 drivers attempting the undercut, trying to go a little bit off strategy, and they're bitten by the curses of pit lane, both pit lane speeding on entry and an unsafe exit for Dirksen's case. You
were talking about the closeness of the competition. I feel like some of these drivers may be pushing things a little bit too far. Just gotta keep it within the limits here if they want to try and take a win, because small mistakes have proven costly.
Not Dirksen, by the way. Krutzler was the driver who fell through pit lane exit line. So forgive me, all the Derek Dirksen fans in chat. Maybe they just had a heart attack there, but he's still fine and good at P4. Krutzler's at the back trying to recover down to 27th.
Coming down into the braking, Jeremy Hall will stay ahead of Ferrer once again. That's Ankerberg Zona having served his penalty that we saw coming out of pit lane. So he's going to be a lap down, and this is where trying to fight with some of that lap traffic could make or break some of the races, depending on if Anker wants to try and be very polite or if he's going to just run his own race and not worry about them.
It's very difficult to get out of the way, though, in this part of the track. Even if you try and get out of the way and open the door, you might actually end up being a hindrance. So let's see what he does. Coming through ski block, not getting out of the way, just doing his usual thing. Through Masters, it's a flat-out corner. You couldn't get out of the way through there if you tried. Now through turn 9, this may be the opportunity to open the door a little bit. He's not going to do it just yet. He's staying committed. Blue flag's not really out just yet, but I imagine once the radios start to open up, once Jeremy Hall gets that little bit closer, maybe down this straight, we might see him open the door because he's not fighting for position here.
And did you see Charlie kind of poke his nose in there? He was trying to use the distraction of this lap car to see if he could pull something on Hall, but it doesn't work. This is definitely backing them up, though. Look at that as Abu Haka also joins the fray. Elsum is now a part of it. This is certainly going to be causing some frustration for the number 28.
Yeah, the short back straight there wasn't the best place to go for it. He seems to have determined, but the front straight is an absolutely perfect place to do this. So much room, you can pull off to the side, and there you see Anker pulling over to the hard right, letting Jeremy get to his outside, and Charlie Ferrer takes that opportunity to come down pit lane and once again try and get out of traffic and try and find some clean air at the back of the field. Hopefully he doesn't speed on pit exit like everybody else, though.
Yeah, really. I think this was a perfect call from Charlie Ferrer. There was clearly some issues with that lap traffic. Unfortunately, the car, or Ankerberg Zona, let them go right as he decided to make that call. So it might not work out, but with the other cars around them having to deal with that lap traffic still,
keep it in the lines, Charlie. Keep it in there.
Yeah. Let's watch this. It was that white line to his left, driver's left, that caused the black flag earlier. He stayed well off of it, so I think he made sure that he didn't accrue that penalty. Back up to the battle for third position. Komats versus Dirksen, but we've lost one of the drivers as they've pitted in to try and see if they can undercut them, but won't be showing back up because of that mistake, because of that penalty. So it could be down to just a 2-car fight to the finish.
It could be. Pit lane has been very, very difficult here, so I almost wonder if some drivers are starting to worry about coming down. We've had literally one driver successfully navigate pit lane, so I don't know, maybe everybody's just going to try and wait until the last possible moment, bring it down when you've got a car in front of you or a car near you to use as a reference, because it has been very, very treacherous coming in on your own. But these two guys, they're going to keep it going. They can probably go for a good 7 more minutes if they want to fully extend the fuel tanks. And they're happy to continue their battle on track, at least. Dirksen's going to try and do it the old-fashioned way, on track.
By the way, Yurtz had a spin, it looks like, I think in turn 10 earlier. He's back going, but he may have touched the wall on that, so he might have a slight bit of damage. He stays out this time as we continue to follow the battle for P3 on our screens. We haven't talked about him a lot because there really hasn't been much happening, but Kevin Jokel's our leader by about 7 seconds now, so he's been steadily picking this up at the front.
Yeah, this has been a Zandvoort track day for him so far, ever since lap 1. He was about 0.3 faster than Gibson, I think, in qualifying, if my memory serves me correct, but it's only been about 25 minutes in this race, and he's pulled a 7.5-second gap. That's almost full seconds on some of these laps that he's been pulling. He has just absolutely figured this place out, and it's a place where practice is absolutely rewarded. I imagine he hopped on the sim earlier this week, maybe did a little bit of rain testing just for fun, but then said, no, I'm not focusing on rain, I'm focusing on PCA sim racing, and he threw that car around Zandvoort for many, many laps, I'm sure, because he is on it here today.
Certainly looks impressive. Meanwhile, we can kind of see Gibson a little bit farther up from these two. He's only about 3 seconds away. So if Dirksen can make this pass, if he is faster than Komats, it might be imperative that he gets by sooner rather than later so he has enough time to try and chase down P2. Now, P1 might be a whole nother story as, wow, he went way to the inside of that curve there, did Dirksen. I think that's fair game. I don't think you get a slowdown penalty, but he was taking an aggressive line.
Yeah, I call that the LA Coliseum NASCAR line through there. But also, I mentioned rain. There won't be rain, if anybody was wondering, in Series 11 here in PCA Sim Racing. It's just too late in the season to introduce that halfway, but you have to imagine next time around, Series 12, the newest addition to iRacing, the newest part of sim racing on this platform with the weather, you have to imagine that'll play a role, but not until a couple of months from now.
Absolutely. I believe this is Boccieri that we've got on our screen here. Carl, a regular and certainly easily identifiable with his very multicolored paint scheme on that car. He's got Rob Neville fighting him for 14th. They've both climbed significantly today. Carl's up 6, Rob's up 9.
Carl Boccieri probably going to be riding on a nice high right now. He's from a similar part of the country to me. We've had some nice weather over the past couple of days. It's not been miserable like it's been for the entirety of February, so he's been having a good day during the day, enjoying the weather, and then he gets to go drive his virtual Porsche after he drives his real Porsche in real life. It's a good time to be Carl.
Looks like Estupinian staying ahead of Mark Frost right now. This is a battle for 10th spot, so some stats up for grabs there. Oh, this is closer. Komats actually going defensive with Dirksen, trying to make him feel threatened down into Tarzan once again. Goes for the sharper exit to try and straight line it, but it doesn't quite give him what he needs. He'll stay behind still. Now we're starting to see the 505 try and experiment and do some things, as I think we got, looks like Sachs, Elsom, and Gill have all pitted.
Now it's a little bit of a pit party. We're getting to almost the end of the fuel tank. Drivers are going to be seeing the lights on their dash start to light up, low fuel, and everybody's starting to realize that you do kind of need to take a pit stop. It's not going to be physically possible to make it to the end without a pit stop. I don't believe pit stops are actually required by the rules, but they are required by the laws of physics. With the fuel limit, you simply can't go 40 minutes on one tank of fuel, so you are forced to take a pit stop, but it's not too much of a loss. It's a short run through pit lane, and it does open up the strategy. As we've seen here, this pit window has been about 15 minutes wide.
We did have to answer that question earlier in the season because of the yellow flags. You're right. It is not required to take a pit stop, and there are drivers that have attempted it through the yellow flags, just stretching the fuel out to get to the end. But it's difficult. You need a lot of yellow flags, so it's not something we want to see happen, but it is a feasible strategy if it can work out. Meanwhile, back again with Komats and Dirksen. Not close enough this time. In fact, he's decided, you know what, let's undercut him. Let's go for the pit stop.
I do like that move, but I'm slightly worried for him because where he's pitting, he was, about 2 seconds ahead of Saxton when he came in? Look who's 2 seconds ahead of Saxton right now. You've got De Silva there, and you've got Joseph Evers back there. If those two drivers don't come down pit lane this time, Derek Dirksen could run the risk of coming out in traffic and losing even more time, because he was maybe getting held up behind Steve Komatz. Maybe he was just at the same pace as him. He's definitely faster than those guys deeper in the field, and he does not want to be riding behind them, and Jokel doesn't want to be riding behind the damaged number 30 right now.
Oof, yeah, there's that lap traffic once again. So, and I think Neville may have had some issues because he's on the horn to race control about something. So I'll have to go and check that in a bit, see if we can figure out what happened there. We're down to about 10 or so cars that do still need a pit stop. The highest driver to have pitted is Dirksen, who just did his now. He returns in 8th position. He is ahead of De Silva and Sachs, so it looks like he's good.
Yeah, he did a good job there of probably watching his relative, making sure there was a window there, and he did find a window, about a second ahead of Evers and about 4 seconds behind Lervold. That is very well calculated, and that is a high level of driving ability. It's so difficult to do that when you're in the car at 100% battling like he is, but when you're a sim racing driver, you generally have to do the strategy yourself sitting behind the wheel in a situation like that. So when you nail it like that, that is high level stuff.
I was able to track down what happened to Neville. Unfortunately, I don't think whatever he was going to the stewards for is going to net him any sort of compensation, because it was Boccieri pitting in, and Neville was not paying attention and tried to follow the slipstream. Well, Carl's got to brake sometime, and Rob wound up running into the back of him and wrecking himself. So they'll probably toss that one aside, because I think that's a fairly slam dunk case.
Yeah, it is a slightly awkward pit entry. It's one of those pit entries where it's not necessarily difficult at eye level. It's just kind of a straight line with a little kink and braking for the cone. But those are actually pretty difficult because there's not a natural chicane or curve or anything to slow you down. You are in a straight line. You have to slam on the brakes and get it slowed down. It's almost like another corner instead of having something natural to gradually slow you down.
So we come back to one of our front runners here, coming up and over the crest. Looks like into Masters and down and around into turn 9. These drivers having put themselves through 30 minutes of racing. We should see the rest of them pitting in shortly here. This is Mark Frost, currently in 5th right now. The car that's kind of in the background sometimes is Ankerberg Zona, so that's not for position. This, however, coming around the banking is the 911 of John Gibson. He's pitting in from 2nd. His has been a rather lonely race because he's been ahead of that battle for P2 by a comfortable margin, but he also hasn't been anywhere near Jokel.
And you see everybody else coming in as well. That tells you that we've reached the hard end of the fuel tank. You simply can't go any further on a tank of fuel right now. You need to finally make that pit stop. And you'll see Frost come in. You'll see Lervold come in. Everybody is going to have to come in on this lap. But these are battles for position a little bit further back. Williams and Lacombe and Krutzler, for that matter. He's on his drive forward. He's looking for at least a couple of extra points to make up for that spin from earlier. And you're definitely going to watch him make up at least those 2 spots.
Oh, Dirksen versus Komatz, though. Dirksen beat him out, so he'll get that spot through strategy. Eskridge returning to the track as well. Randy Lervold looks like he's just completing his. You were talking about drivers not being able to go longer. Well, it looks like Mark Frost and Joseph Evers disagree with you. They're on lap 20.
Wow. I do slightly worry about that, though. I hope they're able to make it to the end of the lap, but when everybody else in the field comes down in the same lap, you do have to wonder, did they maybe extend it a little bit too far? Are they going to be able to make it to the end of the lap? Judging by what I'm seeing here, it looks like Mark Frost is coming out of turn 10 right now. I think he'll be okay. So, well done to them. Fuel save Masters in the middle of a race like this. That's high quality stuff, and it might save him a couple of seconds and a shorter pit stop. Could get him a spot or 2.
Yeah, we'll see where he winds up exiting out. He sits in 2nd place. Evers is in 6th, but obviously that'll be slotted well down the order as we check in on Charlie Ferrer. He's been in a lot of action today. He's been chasing Jeremy Hall, but Hall's put him at arm's length. It's almost second and a half between these pair. But the same deal, you could say, with Abu Haka behind him in that pink machine. Looks like he has fallen off. Gibson is just behind Bergzona, so I think he should be able to put a lap on him. And well, he's showing himself down to the inside, but Anchor is not interested in pulling off, as Frost did now pit in there. You can see as he went into the lane, going up to the high side of Tarzan. Is Anchor going to let him through? He's not making life easy. Now he pulls
Derek
off.
Dirksen so happy right now. He was about a second behind Gibson, and just with those couple of corners of getting held up, suddenly it's only half a second of gap, and Dirksen's going to blow around the outside of that lap car, and he is within the edges of draft range, and he's especially within the edges of being seen in John Gibson's mirror now. He's probably going to send Anchor a $50 check after this, maybe.
Yeah, really. Man, that was a silver platter for Derek Dirksen. Just all that time was eaten up, and now Gibson could be under threat after what I said was a lonely race. Well, now he's going to get the excitement in that number 911 car coming out to turn 10 here. He opens up the door but tries to straighten out that exit of the left-hander. That does do him well, as it looks like he's got a better exit than Dirksen.
If it is any solace for John Gibson right now, Dirksen was not able to make the move on Komat's on track. He put the pressure on for basically 30 minutes of this race, and he was only able to make the move in the pit cycle. So Gibson might be able to take a lesson from that and might just be able to look forward, know that Dirksen hasn't really been able to make a move on a similarly paced car, and he might just be able to cross the line this time with about 4 laps to go and not even worry about the car in his rear view mirror.
Cross the line once again. Just a few laps to go now, maybe about 4 of them left for our drivers as they swing down into Tarzan once more. Komat's, once he was passed, he's also been having trouble both with the lap traffic and keeping up with Dirksen. Was unable to get by Anchor Bergzona and is dropping off of them quite quickly. The the chrome and red car of John Gibson looks like he's picked it back up. Dirksen now about 6/10 behind. I guess he's got a fire lit under him now that he can see that 5:05 in his mirrors.
Evan Eskridge and Mike Sackstein. This is an excellent battle for the last spot in the top 5. Inches separating these two. That is the only thing separating those two front bumpers. Sackstein did a good job, though, through ski block, extending it a little bit more committed. It's tough stuff holding back Kenneth Eskridge, though. He's been one of the best drivers in terms of actually making passes today. You might be able to look at Derek Dirksen behind you and think he hasn't been the best at making passes today. Eskridge has been literally the opposite. He's going to look for a door, and he might actually be able to make it work.
Also want to give some love to some of our hard chargers further in the field. Joseph Evers is up 11 spots, currently running in 14th. He's done great, but he's been undone by Chris Costas. I said he wasn't going to be in this race. I was wrong. He did manage to make it to the grid, and he's gone from 35th up to 23rd. 12 positions for that car.
Well done. And Joe, unfortunately with that miss, you've cost us our credibility.
Apparently, Dirksen, in the meantime, here, still on the back of Gibson, coming up through Tarzan. And he's been close, just not close enough. He does regain a couple tenths this last lap. It's back down to 0.4 of a second now, trying to see if he can squeeze anything out of John in these final laps.
And it is definitely a curse of fate when you're trying to race against a 911 Porsche. That's just kind of fate that a 911 Porsche is going to do pretty well. But Dirksen can very well undo this. He's done it basically every other week where he's beat John Gibson on track. Unfortunately, it's a very different situation for him now. He's actually got to make a pass. He's got to use every bit of racecraft he has. He's very, very close. That's a good run through turn 7, but through turn 8 rather, down into turn 9, back in the heavy braking zones, and then 180 degrees at turn 10. He just loses a critical tenth or so in some of these lower speed corners that he really needs to get back if he wants any hope of making this move.
Yeah, John definitely looks very, very planted out there. He's handling this car and set up quite well. But yeah, you mentioned that 911 on the car. I wonder how long he sat in line at the office for registration, waiting for that to open up so he can claim that number, because I'm sure it was highly sought after.
Yeah, he was in a tent for a week.
Yeah.
Like people outside of a 1975 concert.
Oh, boy. Well, he's going to earn a second place here tonight if he can just hold off Derek Dirksen, our championship leader, for a couple more laps, might even be 2 more. It might actually be 3 more because Kevin crossed the line much earlier than them, and it's about 1:34. So yeah, he might tack on an extra lap here.
That's always fun. A race against the clock instead of a race against a predetermined lap count. Just have to hope that the checkered flag gets thrown not 2 laps early like we've seen a little bit earlier this year. But that's also going to be an interesting development about the fuel. If there is an extra lap, or potentially 1 less lap than expected, well, actually 1 extra lap than you expected, does everybody have enough fuel if Jokel does cross the line in just the right amount of time with 1 second left on the clock to add a whole nother lap around?
Yeah, exactly. And well, iRacing now has that automatic calculator that you can do within the sim and tell it how aggressive you want it to be. Let's hope the drivers didn't mark it too aggressive and gave it some leeway so that they can make it around on that last lap if we've got that one tagged on. Jeremy Hall versus Charlie Farrer using up plenty of fuel in this fight for 7th place. Boy, they are nowhere near Ken Eskridge, and it was Ken versus Jeremy earlier on, but Ken was definitely the faster of the two because, like I said, he just took off like a shot.
It's almost like a 2-car race out here. You can just barely see Nathan Abuhalka in the background, but not quite close enough. And you see Barney with the white flag there over on pit lane. That does mean 1 singular lap. You don't have to worry about that extra lap anymore.
And that was with about 1:36 left to go, so they're gonna call it just a hair early, it appears, as Jokel has about 9 seconds over John Gibson, so he's certainly in a very comfortable position right now. Just more of that lap traffic to deal with. That's Peter Yurtza and Rob Neville just in front of him currently, and I don't think they're actually, no, they are battling for position. Apologies. So he's got to respect that these two are still fighting for at least pride down here.
A little bit of championship math here. First place gives you 25 points. Third place gives you 18 points. The championship's currently separated by 8 points, and with Dirksen and Jokel both taking their drop weeks already, coming out of this week, if finishing positions are as they are right now, there will be 1 single point separating first and second in the championship. If that doesn't excite you for the final 2 rounds after that one, I don't know what will.
Yeah, I love when these series come down to it at the very end, and the competition is high, because we saw a bit of domination early on in Series 11, but it's definitely forced a few drivers to look over their shoulders, I'd say, at this point. As we come around the last corner, we saw the white flag, so this should be it for Kevin Jokel as he approaches the start-finish line. There it is. Checkered flag is out. Jokel will win the sport class here at Zandvoort.
Just utter domination. Nothing more you can say about that. We said his name basically once, and it was when he won.
It was close between Gibson and Dirksen, about 1/4 of a second between them at the line, but Derek couldn't get himself into P2. Even still, credit to the 505. Remember, he started in 10th today, so a lot of passes to get him where he is the last of the top 10, crossing the start-finish line. Oh, Gilles Estepinen, I think, just had an off, and he's going to lose 2 places as he comes to the line.
Oh dear, that drops him out of the top 10. Patrick Gill got by, Randy Lervold got by. He has got it back going again, but every corner on this place can bite, especially that penultimate corner on the final lap. Poor old Gill made it 39 minutes and 59 seconds, and the one mistake got him at the end.
Remember, we saw Neville and Yurtza having that fight. Well, they managed to take that white flag before they got past, so they're going to be the last ones to cross the line and decide that 29th and 30th position in this race as the rest of the field streaks across. Just a few more to go until we reach those last drivers on the lead lap, but we're going to go through the results anyways as Kevin Jokel will manage to take the win over John Gibson. 1-2 finished as they started. Derek Dirksen with an excellent climb to finish on the podium in 3rd as Steve Komatz was 4th, overtaken in the pit stops. Mike Sachs wound up P5, and then it was Ken Eskridge who came home 6th today. Jeremy Hall was 7th. Then from there, it is Charlie Farrer P8 and Nathan Abuhalka 9th. Mark Frost rounds out your top 10.
Down in P11, Patrick Gill had a recovery day. The number 111 in P11. Randy Lervold behind him. An unlucky 13th, unfortunately, was fate for Gill after a mistake on the final lap dropped him a couple spots. Joseph Evers, big mover. David Krutzler, a big mover in both directions, fell early after an early spin, drove back up to 15th to recover some points. And then Williams, Lacombe, De Silva, Long, and Costas round out the top 20. Costas, I believe, at the end of it all, the biggest mover.
Yeah, climbed up 14 positions. Elsom was 21st. It was Mark Foley, P22. Then it was Jeffrey Gardner, 23rd. James Legault was 24th. He actually gained, I believe, about 8 spots, so great run from him. Jarawala, after his early wreck, he only got his way back up to 25th, as Hammond was 26th, and then it was Greg Bluen, P27. Then you had Scott Nell finishing 28th today, Rob Neville 29th, and the last one on the lead lap was Peter Yurtza. Rest of the field, lap down or DNF, as Bergzona, Walsh, Boccieri, Kaufman, and Gorel. I'd say we had a pretty good fight out there between the drivers. Yes, there were a few mistakes, there were a few wrecks, but for the most part, it was clean and fair.
It was exciting, and a lot of drivers proved that while Zandvoort may be tough to pass at, it's not impossible to pass at. Plenty of racing, plenty of action, and I couldn't be more excited for the rest of the season. Still 2 more rounds to go in this series, and they're going to be pretty exciting places. Mugello coming up, one of the newer tracks on iRacing, and Daytona to finish it off, and a championship that's now separated by 1 point. I'm so excited. I want it to happen now. I don't want to wait for a week or 2 or a month.
Yeah, Mugello is going to be just an absolute blast. I love calling races there. So make sure and join us, because we got a bit more with Zandvoort before then. Wednesday night, March 13th, we'll have the club class here at Zandvoort. A big thank you to the steering committee at PCA Sim Racing, as well as our team tonight, Joey and Ramiro. And also thank you so much for watching tonight's broadcast of PCA Sim Racing. I'm Joe Peak. Race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.